Ayomide here, and guess what? We're back for more incredible journeys into the lives of everyday heroes on the World Without People podcast. Dive into more vibrant stories, shared experiences, and mind blowing perspectives with me in season 2. New faces, new stories, but the same old vibe. So, whether you're a seasoned listener or just stumbling upon this oasis of humanity, welcome. Grab your favorite beverage and join the adventure. Let's celebrate the beauty of the world, one remarkable story at a time. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of The World Without People. My name is Ayomide. Well, I say this all the time, but it's always so interesting when everybody, the person I'm interviewing doesn't even know me as Ayomide. But my name is Ayomide from the show. So happy to be here with a sis of mine. I call her sis, Ronke Aisagbonhi. Where are you from?
Ogun State. Shut up.
Okay.
Okay.
What has Ogun ever done for you? Let's talk about that. What has Ogun ever done for
A
you?
lot. Hey, a
Eh,
lot. Yes.
yeah.
I had some part of my secondary school education in Ogun State. I got to call it Tilaro for a little bit. And my dad was once a supervisor for agriculture in Ebado, which they call Yewa now, Yewa South Local Government. So I spent a little bit of my time in Ogun State. It's awesome. Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. I think that is okay. So, like the other day, we were trying to get my sister's passport or something like that, and she's asking about the local government, and she was like very obsessed because she's like, "Why do I need to know my father's local government? That's not where I was born. I don't even know that I've been there. You know that kind of thing. Like it should be my local government, which is where I was born, where I was raised, that kind of thing. And I totally get that, right? Because like again, especially where you don't have back then, I think you were even if you were not born where your father was born or anything like that, there was just a lot more going home, as we call it,
Yes.
right? But some of us who, your parents transitioned to Lagos, Ibadan, you never actually went back home. And so there's no tie to that. That's why I was like, oh, when you were like, oh, good things. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do for you? So that's really cool. That's really cool, actually. I like that because I'm very much a proud Ondo girl. But it's not because I've been there.
Okay.
I just like it. So that's cool. Okay. All right. And so, Sister Ruke, I know you from church and and remind me, you're a teacher. Now you have 2 businesses, another podcast owner as well, or host as well. Just a very, very amazing, loving person. But we want to talk about something a lot, not serious, but serious today in that you recently started as a host of a podcast where, and I'm going to let you talk about this. Let me just say, tell me a little bit about your podcast.
Okay. So, all right. So, so I think, was it last year? I was looking into starting something to support parents, who have children with autism. And I had no idea how to go about it. And I was just thinking in my head, who do I talk to? I know you've been doing some podcasts. I reached out to you. I reached out to, there's a lady in church as well. Her name is Chine. I think she invited me to do, I can't remember what she asked me to do. And I told her, I said, let's start talking to parents about autism. She was like, go for it, go for it. And I'm thinking in my mind, honestly, that was what I did. I'm like, do you even know that I am not bold enough to sit right enough in front of my computer and talk to people? And I was thinking in my head, but she said, yes, you can give it a try. Start with the podcast and you can gradually move into YouTube. Then I told her, no way. There's no way I'm starting that YouTube, but I will start with podcast. I mean, people will just listen to your voice and then move on. Then that was how one day she showed me a little bit. I started the podcast and I'm like, okay, go for it. I love it. And I think people love it too. So that was how I got started with the podcast.
No, that's awesome. Now, I want you to go back though, because the point of the podcast was birthed out of your own personal experience. So I think maybe talk to me a little bit about because there's very many mediums you could have gone about it. You could have done an organization, like we know someone who does. You could have done many different things, but you thought a podcast. But I think go back with how this experience birthed this journey for you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Good question. So I think my journey started 2013 when I had Daniel. I'm sure, of course, you know Daniel. So Daniel is turning 11 in July. When I had Daniel, we had no experience. Of course, as a new parent, my husband was not here at that time. He was in Nigeria, so I was the only one here. And Daniel, no, he was here when I gave birth to him, but he had to go back because of the kind of visa that he gave him. At that time, I filed for him, but because of the visa, they didn't want him to stay longer until his green card is ready. So he was there for a few months. He went back, so I was the only one taking care of Daniel. And a few months down the line, my mom came so that I can go back to work, and then she will continue to watch, over Daniel while I'm at work. And a few months down the line, we were pretty good, doing well. Daniel started, making some sounds, mama, ba, 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 kids with those consonant vowel sounds. And at one point, it began to decrease. And I didn't even know at that time, like, okay, maybe it's just for a little bit of time. As a first-time parent, I had no idea what was going on with Daniel at that time. So there was this day, I noticed a couple of behavior too, but I thought that as a parent, maybe that's typical of, a toddler. And I remember one day I was walking out, going to work, and my mom called me and said, she's been saying, oh, I want to talk to you, I want to talk to you. But you know how America is, you just want to dash out the next minute so that you can get to work early. And she sat me down, she said, come. She said, I've been noticing something about Daniel, and I know that I've been telling you that I want to talk to you about it. And she said that, do you know how many times Daniel will go to that refrigerator and open that refrigerator? And, I actually wanted to waive it. But with the fact that she's been telling me that she wants to meet with me, I feel like I figured out, okay, let me sit down and listen to my mom. And she said, I've never seen a typical child do that because she raised us. She was once a teacher. She's a retired teacher now. And she felt like, I don't think a typical child would do, what Daniel was doing at that time. And, I tried to but she said, well, you need to call your doctor and let's see what the doctor was going to, say to you. And I called the doctor. Oh, yeah, come, let me see Daniel. And the first thing, she didn't even, of course, the doctors do not give you that kind of diagnosis. But she told me, she said, reach out to early intervention and let's see if that will be helpful. You can, just get started that way. So that way you get something going on. Then you can seek a professional or specialist later on. So I called early intervention as discussed. They came into our home, I think about a week after. They were able to schedule and they did the evaluation and the labs. So after, I think, few weeks, they scheduled a meeting with myself and the people who did the evaluation. And there's someone they call the service coordinator who has been the one, in charge of the meeting. So she would schedule the meetings for everybody. And she told me that she said, oh, while we're discussing, the evaluators were saying what they noticed about Daniel. And they told me that Daniel is going to be eligible for, a couple of services. But while we're waiting for that, we can seek an audiologist, which, the person, of course, watch or check your ears for any form of inflammation, any form of infection. And she said that along the line, they will refer me or I can talk to my doctor if I need any other information. So then that was how this journey started. Daniel was approved for DI, that is developmental intervention, I think 4 times a week. Daniel had OT, Daniel had speech therapy, Daniel had all the therapies going on. And while that was going on, of course, I had a full-time job. And because I have to, show up for those appointments, it was really hard to keep my full-time job because, I have to take him to the hearing appointments. I had to take him to different appointments, doctor's appointment. I was going back and forth. And anyway, to cut the long story short, after a few months of I wouldn't say no improvement, but those signs were still there. And I was still not convinced that, my mom and I were like, okay, there's still something going on and we need to see a developmental pediatrician. So our doctor referred us to children specialized. Sorry, this is not an ad, but and referred us to Children's Specialized Hospital. And that was where we got a diagnosis. I would say I was shocked because I never knew what that was. I mean, I've heard about it, but I don't even know how I felt. You know, it was just mixed feelings because I know, of course, you know, I've heard it from Dr. G in church, but I don't know what I was thinking at that time. I was lost. I cried so much. What I mean, cried. I cried so much, you know. Of course, I'm glad that I was, at that time, my mom was with me. So I had someone, you know, a shoulder to cry on. I got my husband, you know, to explain. And the thing that came to my mind at that time was, is Daniel going to be the same person, or how is life going to be for him growing up? That was the first question in mind. But at one point, I figured out, girl, it's no time to cry. Get up, keep moving. We have to see what we can do to help him, because, I mean, if I sit there and keep denying myself, I figured out it wouldn't help. So I need to reach out to, you know, Dr. G. I reached out to, who else? I think she was the person that really, Pastor. Yes. So she was the person that, of course, supported me a lot on this journey. You know, it was really the support I got from her. I will say that it has been so helpful. And back to my mom was also shocked because, of course, in Nigeria, no one has ever heard of that. You've heard of Down syndrome, you've heard of cerebral palsy, you've heard of different disabilities, but not autism. I think she wasn't, I mean, because she didn't know anything like that too. Teaching in a school, she's like, I don't know whatever that is, but what you can do to support Daniel, then we need to get started. It's a lot of, you know, it's a lot of information. It's a lot to share here. If we start, we're not going to leave here. So that was how the whole journey started. And then after, you know, about 9 years or 10 years of experience, I figured out that, now you are at a point where I think you've gotten, I'm not saying I'm perfect or finally gotten things together, but I feel like, yes, I've had a lot of experience, professional experience, personal experience that I think I'm comfortable enough to share my journey. It wasn't easy because I'm thinking in my mind, you know, I was thinking in my mind at that time when I started, like, oh, people are going to be like, oh, you're sharing your information out, you're letting everything out. But then I was thinking on the other hand too, like, if you're not leaving this information out, how are people going to learn? Because if I had that much information, I don't know what must have changed, you know? And I felt like, well, go for it. Whatever people want to say, you know what? Do what you want to do. But I am here to help our families, to support them on this journey, to also make them understand that they are not alone. You know, in this journey, there is help available for them.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying the podcast, please don't forget to hit the subscribe, like, or share button. Whether you're on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or YouTube, your support helps us to reach more people. Stay tuned for more amazing conversations, and thank you for being a part of our community.
Okay, so like you said, your mom didn't, as a teacher and not having any awareness of this kind of thing, have you been able to go back now, and then is there maybe the consideration that, okay, there were other kids that maybe had something like this, but they may have not, what's the word, like they just didn't know what it was? Have you guys had that conversation, you know, together?
Okay, so my mom she was here a couple of years after Daniel, I think about when Daniel was about 5 or 6. And we were able to have some discussion, of course. But I don't think she finally agreed to it. And she still don't understand. And I don't blame her. My mom's from Nigeria. She grew up in Nigeria. Yeah. She spent all her life in Nigeria. So I just told her that this is what is going on. Of course, she's always concerned and asking me, how is Daniel? How is he? Is he talking more? Is he improving more? But she has never mentioned, you know, she already retired. We never talked about if she remembered anyone while growing up having that kind of, you know, diagnosis. But she's familiar with the other one. She's familiar with the other ones, but not autism.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And what do you think is hard to understand? And actually, before we answer that, one of the things you had said was, you know, initially you weren't talking about it. And I didn't know for the longest time. I think the first time I actually now found out was when you started doing more with my goal, because I mean, I've said hello to Daniel. Daniel responds to me like, again, I know there's a spectrum, so maybe to that point, but Daniel never gave me the thought or the idea that he was. So I never mentioned it. And I guess maybe talk about that. Like, did you not mention it because, hey, he was not, I don't want to say as divergent, as maybe some other kids? Or do you think it was from a place of shame? Because again, people like your mom don't understand. So like, do you know if anything, or maybe it was just you're private and you don't just normally talk about the thing? Like we talk a lot. You ask me about my siblings all the time. You talk to my siblings all the time. But and in fact, I almost want to go and ask Shion if she knows or she knew. Like, especially my sister that worked with, your kids. Because I'm like, I don't remember any time, any place where I thought that was the case until, I tried to see you working with another organization about autism, and then you won an award and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's very interesting because honestly, I thought people knew. I am telling you, that was what I thought. So because when we had the My Goal Gala last night, no, I said last year, last year.
Yeah.
No, I think that was this 24. I think that was 2022, and that was the first time the person came up to me. I mean, the next day she saw me in church and she was like, "Ronke, I never knew Daniel is on the spectrum," and I was like, "What? And we've been in this church together for how many years?" I was shocked. I just assumed that people already know because she told me the same thing. She said she would say hi to Daniel. Daniel would just wave. But the only thing is that she noticed that Daniel would not say like hello, like hi or the word, but she knows that Daniel will respond, to her. She said she never knew. But in my mind, it was, will I say? Honestly, I don't know. I don't want to be. I don't want to say it's shame because I'm like, everybody see us in church. So I don't think I should be ashamed of that. But maybe I assumed that people already know. I assumed until people, were asking me, oh, I never knew Daniel. I said, all those years, like Daniel has been in the church for as long as you all have been here. Like, so.
Exactly.
And I think it's also because I assumed that people did not know. But for people who already can identify the sign, they of course they will catch that. But I just assumed that people already know. So yeah.
And so back to the other question, what is hard to understand? And maybe the other way to say it is that for you, how easy was it to understand? Because again, like you mentioned, you're a first-time parent. When I think about my future and becoming a parent, I think, is there something I should be doing now, right? And then there's now, especially because I've also worked with My Goal, and shout out to My Goal. This is an organization we have here in New Jersey that works with parents and people, families of people with autism. I know some of the myths that we've tried to debunk, like, okay, or maybe it's not myths, I don't know. But like, oh, if the father is older, right? Like if the father is older, then that's a thing. Just the environment. There's been so many, many, many things that people have said. And honestly, sometimes when I think about being a parent, those are some of the things I think about, like, oh my gosh, okay, do I have to worry about that? Is there something I need to check? Is there something I need to? So hindsight is 2020, as they say. But how did you understand? How was it easy to, kind of navigate that feeling of maybe, should I have done something? Did I do the wrong thing? All of that kind of stuff.
So I will say that what actually opened my mind to this was I started as a substitute teacher in 2013. And then in 2016, I got a full-time role as a paraprofessional for a student with autism. I was working one-on-one with this kid, but it's a spectrum. So everyone will show different signs. So this kid just needs some kind of extra support, some kind of push to complete his work and focus. But it was not, there was no behavior issues in classroom, but it just needs some kind of focus in the classroom. And that was where I started. So at that point, I didn't get to that point where I feel like this is like Daniel. This boy is verbal, but Daniel is not. But I'm thinking in my mind, so I need to know more about this. So I decided that of course, I read some kind of articles, expressions from, from Dr. G. And I decided in my mind that, okay, this is what I want to do, because I've seen different things. I've often worked as a substitute teacher with Elizabeth Public Schools. I just love the kids in either learning disabilities classroom or some kind of autism, classroom, because especially the little ones, they're so cute. You need to see them. So today I made up my mind that, well, I think I need to go back to school and read special education. And then I want to focus on autism. I think that is where I began to come to the realization that, okay, now I think I need more information. It's not me working with this kids alone, but I need to know what I need to know to learn about these children, and also to support, my children, because you already know that it's not only Daniel, of course, with Dara. So, but Dara was not. Did I had Dara? I can't even remember if Dara was here at that time, but I never knew Dara, of course, will show up with any sign. But I made up my mind at that point that I want to go back to school and learn more how to better support, Daniel and other children with disabilities. I just figure out that special education, I love special education generally, because those children, there's a kind of fulfillment when you're trying to support a kid who needs some kind of attention, who you need to support one-on-one. You're sitting there and you're showing the kid, and then you're teaching the kid. I love one-on-ones a lot. So I think that was one of the things that opened my mind to feel like, okay, I think this is what I really want to do, and I'm ready to face it head front. And that was the point that I feel like, okay, now you're going into it. There is no shaming. There is nothing anymore. Just face it head on and then just get started. So I hope I answered the question right.
Well, let me say it again. So, let me say it another way. So I think you're just trying to say that for you, it was just like, I'm just going to educate myself about this thing, and there's nothing I need to worry about. But you didn't. Was there any point in time you felt like, I don't want to say this is my fault, because I know, we obviously know better, but the idea just being that you felt like, okay, your initial reaction, let me say it like that, your initial reaction, was it more fear? Was it more sadness? Was it more fault finding? And especially with you and your husband, because again, I can imagine that was a very testy time for all of you.
Yeah. Honestly, it wasn't fault driven at that point, no. But it was more of course, sadness, because I don't have an idea what to do with this baby, with this toddler. And as a first time mom, I'm looking at, okay, so how do I support this child? Just sitting there, just, doing some repetitive behavior, and you're thinking in your mind, where did I get this? I mean, it's not fault, like I said, it's not fault driven. Especially when when I bounced back from that feeling of sadness, I felt like there has to be some kind of support. There has to be something out there that can help my child, instead of sitting down and brooding and thinking that, the fault will not take you anywhere. I decided to just face it at front. Like, okay, it's not about me. It's not about my husband. But I found also that some people who have never had any family with an autism diagnosis do have it. So some people have no history of autism, and they're coming up with this. So that is when I feel like, well, it can show up from anywhere. So it's nobody's fault. Either you're older, you're younger. I don't want to say it's similar to, God forbid, cancer. It comes from anybody at any age. So the same thing is similar to autism. Anybody can have it, especially with the point we are now in 2024. I'm telling you, the ratio is like 1 in 36. And I'm sure it's coming up
more and more.
More and more. Yes. It's coming up in, I don't know, but no fault finding.
Yeah, that's great. And you, as a professional in this space now, what do you attribute that to? Because again, there's which is why I asked the initial question, which is the idea that people just didn't know, and so we didn't count them as, autism. We maybe have said mental health behavior, and I'm talking about back then. But now you're seeing it more and more, and that's frightening because, again, except you're telling almost every parent now to go and start learning about autism or whatever, you just never know. And it's like you can't even, like, is it drinking? Is it, did you smoke too much weed?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you're supposed to do? Should you have had your kids at 20 something or 18? Maybe back then that was what helped them, and that, little things like that. And I'm not saying that we need to come up with things that people need to have as kind of preventive thing, because, again, maybe because we are Christians, it's like, well, God gives you what He gives you
Yeah.
or what you can handle or whatever. But on the other hand, and let me say the adverse way is that you don't want people to even almost know now so that they don't start aborting, because I feel like that's what's going to end up happening.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we have to kind of look at what is in the society or in the water or in the food or whatever, because I'm no longer just seeing it in America. To your point, where we felt like we didn't even see it in Nigeria, now we're seeing it in Nigeria. Now we're seeing it in people that never left Nigeria, because it's a different thing. You can talk environments now because, okay, maybe you moved to America, and so maybe that is the reason why we're seeing a lot of Africans, or, well, people, but Africans in Africa. You can blame immigration and, just the acculturation. What's happening back in Nigeria with people that haven't moved, who the food hasn't really changed as much, things haven't changed as much. So what's happening?
You know what? It's really tough because I know that recently not even recently, people have been talking about Tylenol. That, during pregnancy, don't take Tylenol. And another myth is the MMR shot that kids do get.
Okay.
So when Daniel was growing up, I am that parent that would do 2 shots a day or sometimes 3 shots, because of course you don't want to go back and forth, back and forth. But I didn't spread it out, is shot out as much. So while I was in school, I remember one of my professors saying, because I asked a question, like, okay, they said MMR, but they figure out it's not even the MMR anymore. So I said, okay, I listened to whatever you teach me in the classroom, but I'm still going to figure out something for myself. So after Daniel and we had Daniela, I decided that, since people have been talking about that MMR shot, I will spread or space out a shot. No, she's not getting 2 at a time. No way. I don't mind driving there every month, but I will make sure that she gets a shot. So I didn't get her MMR until she was 2.5, until she started talking, until I could see that she's been making 2-3 word sentences. But even though Daniela did not walk early enough like Daniel did, but I was not concerned because she was communicating. So that was when I took the shot for her. I'm like, okay, I think this worked. Then when I had Dara, it took me some time too. I spread it out, and still, even though she's verbal, so I tried to experiment too. I mean, in between, those children, I tried to see if it was really the MMR, but like you shared, also it's showing up in Nigeria. And I'm telling you, it is so rampant now that parents are, how will I say, parents are concerned. There was this live Twitter that I joined, I think 2-3 weeks ago, and most parents and professionals, I think there are more of parents than professionals, they were discussing about autism. I think that was in April. That was Autism Awareness Month. And they had a couple of parents sharing their journey, about, this is how I found out about my kid. This is how I started speech therapy. And I was thinking in my head, like, oh my gosh, this has been for as long as we know, but we did not realize that this is autism. Because, of course, a typical Nigerian, when you see a kid acting like that, especially like my Dara, I do tell her, like, if you have been to Nigeria or you were born in Nigeria, I'm telling you, they must have smacked. I said, I'm telling you, I said they must have smacked the H out of you, that your parents will be tired. Even the ones that are not as stubborn as you are, I see how they treat them. Now, not to talk of you, they're going to smack the H out of you. But now people are beginning to realize that this is autism. It's totally different. And I've also seen people in different groups, And on Facebook too, people sharing their journey. Like recently, I think I shared on my Facebook account where a kid, I don't know his age though, but is on the autism spectrum. And he just had a doctorate degree. He graduated literally, I think, last week in Atlanta. And that's, the parent came up, and that was one of the parents that also showed up in the live Twitter session that I talked about. So this kid, I mean, look at that. He earned a doctorate degree. And so because it's a spectrum, we cannot fit, everybody in a box. So in Nigeria, I figured out that we already had it, but nobody knows what it's being called. For Down syndrome, you can see it, right? You can tell, oh, this is how Down syndrome, kids are. You can tell. Even for CP, which is cerebral palsy, you can tell how they look. But with autism, no one knows. You don't know what is under. So except they have those behavior, and most of them keep their children at home that you don't even get to see them. We are so blessed that this is America, and people just go about like nobody has some kind of disability. And thank goodness for America. But I can imagine in Nigeria what everyone with this kind of children are going through, especially when there is no services, where there's no support, where there are no resources. It is so hard. And that breaks I wouldn't lie to you, it breaks my heart. And sometimes I feel like going back home and saying, look, that something needs to be done. Like something needs to be done sooner. But going back to, what we were discussing, MMR is the same everywhere. If we can have it in Nigeria, autism is in Nigeria, it's in the UK, it's in America, it's everywhere. So that is why, I didn't even think much about it. Like maybe it's the MMR, maybe it's the this, maybe it's the that. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this here, but some Jewish people, they don't take shots, right? And some of them still find themselves having, you see, it could across like everybody. It could be anybody. And that's why I feel like MMR is totally out of the question. Tylenol, I know that they took the case to court, but they figured out it wasn't Tylenol either. I don't know how much that is true, but if you're saying Tylenol, we have Tylenol here. We have paracetamol in Nigeria. I don't know that.
Same thing.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it could be genetic. That's what I figure out. It is definitely genetic. Sometimes there could be some traces from either parents. There could be some kind of traces, maybe from 3 generations back, and it didn't show up in subsequent generation, and it's just showing up from. So I believe it's definitely genetic, but it has nothing to do with either the environment, like you shared, Nigeria, people are there and they're still having the same diagnosis. So it's definitely not the environment, not the MMR shot, like people say, but definitely it is genetic.
No, and I agree with you 110%. And I've heard, I didn't know the specific name of the vaccines, but I know a lot of people have gone, with vaccines. But again, and this is, it's almost like the controversy you hear about COVID vaccines, about how they're trying to put us in this and that. I have real Christian folks who are talking up this vaccine situation about COVID. And I'm like, you know what? And I get it. Is it possible that they were trying to infect us all? Absolutely. I can't believe that's because there's nothing impossible for man as long as they have the creativity and the ability to do that. And because people are greedy and they want to, line their pockets, so that's okay. But I think more importantly, data is data, right? Look at the numbers. There's so many more people who are taking those and nothing happens to them, right? Whether it's the COVID vaccine or whether it's all these other vaccines that we've listing. I think, again, as Chris says, I always think that God has given us the ability to create and to handle the situations that have come up, in different forms of ailments, right? It's the same way we're finding solutions for cancer. So it's like almost saying that cancer is from the devil, but shouldn't we find, solutions for cancer? We're finding solutions. And, to your point, and it's something I was asking earlier again, it's almost like, did you feel qualified to take this on? Because again, you talked about how you love kids and special education and everything. Would you say that before Daniel, you would have known that that was your purpose? And now that this thing is like, again, not only can you see yourself, you're already helping parents through the podcast, and maybe another few months, you're going to start something in Nigeria, who knows? Like, would you feel like your purpose would have come forth if, in that sense, if Daniel, wasn't your first foray into this? And do you, again, you can go and be like, but I didn't ask for this. It didn't have to be. Like, how do you feel?
Honestly, I think it's a ministry for me. It is, because I've always loved teaching. I have always loved teaching. I mean, my dad was, because he's dead now, was a teacher. My mom is a retired teacher. So it's a ministry for me. Like I said, I love little children. I love, for some reason, even before I had Daniel, I was still pregnant with Daniel. I was just drawn to kids who have, who need some kind of support somehow, either with just having them by this, being by their side to support them, just to show them, oh, this is how to do this, this is how to do this. I've always been drawn to that. But I never knew that autism will be something that I will focus on. I never ever thought of that. But I knew that, okay, this is what I just want to help children. I want to help kids. I remember when I came in newly into America, and I was telling my uncle's wife that she was telling me, oh, nursing, you know how people tell you, oh, nursing is the is the best in America and things like that. And I'm thinking in my head, where is the head that you want to use for nursing? Well, how do you want to even do it? How do you want to survive it? The first thing that came to my mind, and I said, I think I want to explore teaching. Even I told her, I said, I think I want to be with kids. I just have that love for them. I want to help. I want to support them. She was like, oh, because there was, at that time when there's a school close to them where my cousin do attend. And I felt every morning when they walk to school, I just watch them. I just go out and just, see everyone walk to school. So I think I've always, been, I feel like I've always have that love for children to support them one way or the other. But I had no idea if it's going to be like autism or any developmental disability at all. But I just figured out, okay, you're going to work in the school. You're going to do something for the kids. That I know, because I've had that, when you're trying to figure out what are you going to do? What are you going to do? This is America. There are so many opportunities that are right in your face. And you're like, oh, you better go make the money. But it's not about the money. It's the fulfillment and the joy, that I feel. So did I answer?
Okay, that makes sense.
Did I answer?
And I think, yes, no, absolutely. And I love it because, again, it sounds to me, and I think that's what I'm trying to get at. It sounds to me like, I know somebody who says that, when they found out that their kid had Down syndrome, they were like, why me? And then somebody responded, I think their mom responded, why not you? Like, you are in the best position to take this on and do this because, one, this particular couple, they're doctors, and they were at least affluent enough in Nigeria where they could take that on, right? And so it sounds to me like it's the same thing, because one thing that, we're, and let me ask this as a question. We hear it happens more in guys than, or in boys, I should say, than girls. But now you have two, which is also typically rare.
I know,
right? But, it's 2 out of 3 is actually very typically rare.
It is.
So again, you clearly were already equipped with the patience, the endurance, the thing that you needed to be that parent that could then handle this. And so let's talk about the rareness of that, because again, to your point, okay, you're like, okay. And then, your second child is, again, and, I know there's different names, atypical versus typical, whatever. But I guess going into the third, what was the thinking? Like, and by the time it now happens, how do you deal? And knowing the statistics now that because, again, you're already becoming a professional in this at that point.
Yeah. So, thank you for that. I love that question, because honestly, I wouldn't lie to you. I never knew people could have two. Someone was sharing with me in church a few years ago, and, we were driving right in front of the church, and she stopped us. She saw Daniel. She knows Daniel right from when he was in the womb. And she was like, oh, hi, Daniel. He was just talking. And I said, oh, how's your sister? She said, hey, my sister has been struggling. She has 3 kids, 2 on the spectrum. Honestly, that was the first time I was taken aback. I was like, 2? You know, a lot of things ran through my mind. I was like, God, please don't do this to me. At that time, that I was not even here. But I was thinking in my head, 2. You're still dealing with 1. How do you want to manage 2? And now I have another friend who also have 2. And I'm beginning to think, this before Dara. And I'm thinking in my mind, like, how can you have 2? You know, like, honestly, I question God. At that point, Dara was never me. And I'm like, how can someone, you're still dealing with 1, you're still trying to figure out 1, and now you're counting 2? And what broke the camel's back one day, someone had all 3. And then I said, oh, okay. Now I see that people are having more than 1. Now back to Dara. So Dara is the last baby. Well, I don't want to talk about if Dara was planned or not, but you know, when God is, I don't want to talk about, because the gap between Dara and Ella, I don't know, but I don't want to say something.
We have seen worse. We have seen worse.
I don't want to say if Dara was planned, but God understands. So with Dara, I think we were able, and I'm glad that, of course, I already started classes at that time. COVID, I think it was during COVID, and I was at one point, okay, so Dara was going well, of course, making sound, singing, you know, doing different stuff like typical toddlers do, playing with her sister. And at one point, I noticed some kind of tantrums. I think that was what caught my attention. And I'm like, what is this? Like, I mean, I've had Daniela is there, you know, and I'm thinking, why is this baby? Is it because she's the last child? Is it because of this? But the tantrum, they were uncontrollable at that time. She will throw. So I began to question, hey, this cannot be autism because of the tantrum. I started noticing the tantrum. Then down the line, I saw that, you know, she would tiptoe. Then I am beginning to notice and now sit down and watch, like consciously. So then Dara will do some hand flapping, not every time, like Daniel. Then she will, you know, do some kind of repetitive behavior, like, you know, spinning. Then I said, no doubt. I already I'm sorry, I know we're Christians, but some signs that you see, you're like, no, I mean, I'm convinced, but let's just get to the doctor to confirm, because she already showed me the sign. So when we got to the doctor, she went through, I forgot to say that, she went through early intervention, because I had to call them early. I called them early. That was during COVID too. And I was talking to the specialist because we had the same specialist. I had Daniela too on early intervention, because I just don't want to wait. I mean, it's free. Let's just use the resources. So I had the same person from Daniela for Dara. And she was telling me that Dara is just, she said Dara is just stubborn. She has no autism, because she is a special educator too. So, and then I was, sometimes when she said that, I'm like, please just go sit down. I mean, you don't have kids too. Every time she tells it, I'm like, just go sit down. She said, oh, she's just been stubborn. She's just been that. I'm like, but what I'm saying, this is what I am currently studying in school. And these are, I know some signs you have different signs in different people, but the symptoms Zara has been showing is kind of different. And you can have different individuals, because that's why it's a spectrum anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So I told her, I said, well, I want to seek a development pediatrician and just, get started. She was like, oh, Dara does not look like. I said, people with autism do not show, there's no facial symptom.
Yeah.
Until you get close to them, that is when you know. She said, oh, okay, go ahead. And then we scheduled the appointment. We got there. They had the evaluation for Dara. And Dara showed some type of delay, developmental delay. And the doctor was like, she could tell. There are some assessments that they do, like the pretend play. She will have the kid play with some toy. She will call her name. She would do that. She didn't respond. And then Dara is at the board, like the border. I don't even know how to say it. She was like, she's in between, but she's showing those signs and symptoms, especially with those behaviors. And then she said, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Dara has autism, but you can get started. Anything you want to do, start it now. And I told her, I said, I'm not new on this journey. This is the second one. And she was like, oh, okay, so you know what to do, blah, 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 blah. And of course, before we finally, went to see the doctor, I already started working with her, putting in all the effort, trying to see what I can, some resources that I can tap into and things like that. And eventually, anyway, she got a diagnosis. She started school. She's, of course, having therapy currently, which I love. But if I tell you that sometimes I sit down and I look at them like, they are so different. So different.
Yeah.
Daniel is very calm. You know Daniel. Very calm.
Yeah.
Well, Dara, I thought I have some energy. I don't. Nothing compared to Dara. Sometimes, look, by the end of the day, I'm tired. I just want to lay down. Like, I just want to lay down. And the same with my husband, because by the time you're done in the evening, I'm telling you, you just want to lay somewhere and just cry, like sleep. It's really, really, I wouldn't lie, really overwhelming. Really overwhelming, especially with those kind of behavior, and you're trying to figure out, oh, what do I do? What do I do to avoid triggers? Then, it's a lot. It's a lot, and it's an eye-opener for us, to know that, wow, you can have 2, you can have 3, you can have as many. But I think the most important thing is to seek out for help. I'm glad that I have, some kind of support with Daniel. So by the time Dara showed those signs, I would say I was not fully independent to take actions, but I was there to like, okay, now we got this.
Yeah. And so I guess to your point, I think it's helpful to understand really, because we say spectrum all the time, but people, you've actually vocalized what that could look like. And so a question for you, how do you then take care of yourself in this? And the reason I'm asking is because in the midst of this, your husband had a very, very, I don't want to say traumatic, but very, very hard, I don't know what word to use, health scare in all of this. And I just need to understand. And the reason I'm asking is also for everybody who may be listening to this, who may be going through that. Like, how do you take care of yourself? How do you, again, make sure that you are able to pour out? Because you know how they say like a empty jar cannot pour out, right? So how do you do that?
So for self-care, I do a couple of things, and it doesn't have to be expensive. I take walks. That helps me a lot. In fact, myself and my husband, anytime I'm working from home, we take walks. That helps a lot. And I try to sleep, because sometimes when Dara don't sleep, when she wakes up in the middle of the night and she don't sleep, we are both tired. And I'm not that person. I don't sleep during the day. I don't. So it's always hard to have that nap. But, I kind of talk to my husband, on Saturday, I just want to sleep. I don't want anybody to disturb me. I create that me time. I try to also go out. I love to go out. And the reason is because
really? And you wrong,
I just want to. Yes, I love to go out. I love to go out. And the reason is it helps me.
Okay, where are we going to? Just let's quantify this going out, because Pastor Didi may be listening. So you just want him to understand that.
Okay.
He's not listening. Don't
Okay.
worry. But just in case.
So I love to go out with friends to events, just to see people. Seeing people around makes me happy. And also go to church. Just leaving the 4 corners of my home, it helps me so much. Even if it's talking to my neighbors, even if it's going to a restaurant with my husband. We'll keep the kids with, I don't want to mention her name, but with someone. He's always happy to have the kids almost every Saturdays, and then we can get to either get to do me time, myself, or or my husband will do his own whatever. I do my own thing, just to be able to calm, ourselves. But seeing people doing stuff outside my house is very helpful for me. It's not only events, but if it's something outside my home, I love it. And talking about what, the health scare my husband when he had stroke. That was in 2022. And that was the toughest, how do I say it? Toughest part of my life. honestly, because the kids are there. He was in the hospital for 3 days. I couldn't even focus. I had to tell, and at that, I think I started a new job the previous year, towards the end of the 2021. And I was thinking in my mind, how do I run this? How do I keep the kids? Because he's been the one that's been helping with the kids. If, we take turns. And this is someone that can't even do anything. And I figured out I had to write a letter to my supervisor, like, look, if you do not want me to break down, I need to stay off work for 3 weeks. Like, she told me, oh, it's going to be without pay because you've not accrued enough, enough days to be. I said, that's fine. I need my mental health. It's not about, and it's not like I have enough money, but
You have issues.
yeah, amen. But I was thinking in my mind that how do you run this and you still expect me to come to work? Because at that point, she was aware that my husband like had stroke. So how do you want me to show up and teach someone when myself I'm going through like something like that? And then she was like, okay, take the 3 weeks off. I took the 3 weeks off. Honestly, I love it because I'm telling you, I love it. It was like, because the kids, by the time I'm done with the kids, they are in school. Then I'm here with my husband, helping him, supporting him, doing nothing. It's not like I'm not doing nothing, but what I mean is you're not actively watching. So you are helping. The nurses will come to the home, therapists will come. You're constantly receiving visitors in your home. You're cooking. You're taking care of the children. You're cleaning. I was doing everything. It was overwhelming. But honestly, I love my church family. Our church family. Look, they showed up even more than, I was saying, more than what I expected. I'm telling you, they showed up. Like, people will call, text, bring food, cook food, soups. Honestly, I will say that my husband told me, she said, you're blessed. Because people, when you're going through something like that and you look back and you see people, I'm telling you, that's it.
I'm to commend your strength because I did not know. Then again, I feel like at this point, I'm just like, I can be so, because I'm always so, I know everybody, I talk to everybody, but I mind my business. Maybe that's a good thing in that sense. I mind my business. I did not know. I have no clue. And so I have to commend your strength through all of this. And I guess that's the point that, I keep saying we're Christians, so we'll say God gives grace and he gives strength. But I like what you're saying about leaning even into your support system, whoever they are, whatever that looks like for you. Again, maybe if there's any, let's not call people to the altar, but maybe that's the reason for you to go to the church today. Get a church family.
Yeah.
Get a family that will support you. I mean, I've talked about, well, maybe not as much, but my church has supported me. Well, our church has supported me as well in many different ways. So definitely one reason for you to go to church if you haven't been in a while. And honestly, I think what I'm hearing from all of this is the vulnerability of it. Because again, closed mouths don't get fed.
Yes.
Like, let's speak on that, right? Because I think that, you saying, hey, you reach out for help, you talk to this person, you talk to that person, even you saying that you have somebody that almost every Saturday can keep the kids, that's really awesome. Because, I mean, I can imagine that it's a very good time for you to recuperate and things like that. So I really do want to thank you for your vulnerability. I guess my last question, what would you say? 2 ways. One, to, again, someone who's just trying to have a child who's scared of all these new things that seem to be developing every other day, because it's not just autism, there's just always something, before people are worried about the COVID vaccine and how that can affect their kids. Young parents who may, be noticing signs as well. Other than listen to her podcast, and you have to say the podcast name as well. I want you to be the one to say what will you say to those parents in those situations?
Okay, so first, to someone trying to have a family, trying to settle down, I would say do not entertain fear. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Please don't.
Amen.
Well, the fact that someone has it does not mean you will have it. So keep your mind, just keep your mind off it. Focus on your family. Focus on building your family, not on what is going on around you. And I know that it's something you feel like, oh, it's easy to say, but I would say that because that will deprive you of seeing some good stuff that people are, are doing out there. So you want to focus on your family and not think about, oh, autism or no autism, in as much as you have a good health, taking care of your body, taking your medications, doing all you have to do with your body. We've had people in their 50s have babies and their children are fine. So because it's happening to A does not mean it will happen to B. None of my sisters have children with autism. So yeah, so everyone is different. And God knows, I would say that God knows us better. He knows our capacities. He knows what we can handle. He knows what we can. I mean, I know some people can't handle it. I don't know how I feel, but honestly, I am always thankful for strength. I think that's one thing that God has given me. So I would say, if you're planning a family, please don't even think about that. Settle on how to take care of your family, how to have your baby. Do your best to take care of yourself and the baby. One important thing I would say is that when the baby comes, make sure that you download a CDC app and track that milestone. That way, and it's not because of fear, but it's because you want to see how your child is doing per time. So I think that will be helpful. And also, I would say tap into your resource. People around you in a network, what did they do different? Because sometimes you can do the right thing and still get, but at the same time, just focus on yourself, on taking care of yourself. Leave that behind. You don't want that to creep in and the devil is trying to deceive you like, oh, you remember what happens to, no, that's not my portion. And no Google, because sometimes when you start Googling, you see some stuff and then your mind is not at rest and you're thinking, oh, this person, don't focus on that. So just, keep your mind at rest, leave everything to God. He created us and he knows us more than we know ourselves.
Yeah.
So the second question is that for parents who already have children?
New parents.
Okay.
Yes, they're noticing the signs.
Okay, so for parents who are new and just noticing the signs, I will encourage you to speak to someone. You cannot be quiet. And I know the hardest part is the denial part. And denial is also in stages. Denial comes in stages. So the fact that you're noticing that thing in your child does not also mean that your child is having autism. That is why it's important to talk to people in your network, ask questions. No Google. The reason is Google will give you different stuff and then you get confused altogether. So, but when you talk to different people, professionals, talk to regular parents, mix with people, you get more information that way than you focusing on, oh, this is not my child, I'm not seeing this. Because now I want to share a story. Sometimes I remember someone talking to me about a child's friend, saying this person has no child of her own. And I love her courage because she walked up to me and said, oh, this is what I noticed in my child's friend. She can see it, but the parents are in denial. So I would say it's kind of hard because now a parent came up with, nothing is wrong with my child, leave it and live it. So she stepped back and said, well, I've tried my best, to help, but it seems that you are in, and I get it. Of course, it's not easy. I'm not saying, oh, I just came up with, oh, Daniel had autism and I moved on. It's not easy. But when you talk to people is when you get more information. But the earlier, the better. Yeah. The earlier you start, the better it will be easy for you because you have someone walking the journey with you.
Yeah. That's awesome. And again, unfortunately, I don't think we can talk about too many resources in Nigeria, at least as far as people in Nigeria. Over here, though, like she's mentioned, early intervention. But I think you do make a good point. The first thing is understand the milestones of a child. So don't, especially if you're, trying to have a baby or you're pregnant and things like that, don't just think, oh, you will find out on the way. No, read, right? Learn. about what you're supposed to expect with each, and yes, each child is different, but there are some general things like, okay, there's a stage they're supposed to be talking, there's a stage they're supposed to be clapping, there's a stage they're supposed to be able to sit, those kind of things. Educate yourselves. And then, like you said, as far as resources, if there is ever a need of that, it's just now navigating whatever environment. Because let me not just assume it's only US and Nigerian listeners that I have. We do have some people in the UK. Shout out to the UK. Navigating that environment based off of where you are. So I think that's what you're trying to say.
Yes.
The name of your podcast.
Okay, so it's the Autism Pod. That's the podcast. It's been a while. I'm telling you, it's been a while up there, but I think I'm leaning more to YouTube than that. I'm doing more for YouTube than the other one. You want to share the YouTube or not?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, we'll share it in the link and everything. But on YouTube, it's also called the Autism Pod, right?
It's actually Unlocking Minds on Autism on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Unlocking Minds on Autism.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Unlocking Minds on Autism, and we'll tag you in all the social media and everything. But please feel free to reach out to Sister Ronke if there's any questions. Like, she is a wealth of resources, as you can tell. You don't go through this kind of experiences and not already have a wealth of experience. And thank you so much for the vulnerability in sharing all of this with me.
Thank you.
You guys asked me one question.
Thank you for having me. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. So I would like to know, what has life taught you so far?
That's a very good question. Yeah, God is awesome.
Okay.
And mindful of me.
Okay.
But let me make it less churchy. Be flexible. I think, again, to your point, when you answer that question about the fact that how can I have two? Like, that's how sometimes I look at life like, how can this be? How can that be? Like, how somebody suffered one and you now have to give them extra. It just always sometimes seems like a lot for me personally. Like, this idea that I just feel like, there's supposed to be like measures of good and bad, but that's not life. It comes anyhow. Just be flexible. And I think that once you have that flexible spirit, when it comes good and it's fast and it's quick, you're not shocked.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Or at least you're able to accept it, because otherwise you start to doubt that, can it even be real? I've had something happen recently that was so quick and so fast, and you're just like, God, can that be you? Like, is that really you? And then when it's bad, you're like, okay, no worries. I've been here before and I've seen him move and I know it's going to be okay, right? And even if I'm not seeing him move in my own life, I've seen him move in others' life and it's going to be okay. E.g., again, for some, you being a really good example, this story being a really good example of, dealing with a health scare, dealing with care, and still being able to come on the other side, right? So I think for me, that's the biggest thing, being flexible, good or bad. Because again, sometimes the good will come and you're shocked and you're in doubt and you even sabotage it because you're not flexible.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I agree. That was good.
Well, good question, actually. Thank you, so. I know this has been amazing. I really appreciate you. And thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me in today's episode. Just like you would share with friends about a great book you read, don't forget to share this if you enjoyed it. Connect with us on IG and Twitter at TWWPcast and get details on the website at worldwithoutpeople.org. And hey, remember to make loving others the story of your life. Until next time, this is the world without people.